Okay, maybe I like superhero films again. Hello, I am Megan and welcome to Battle Royale with Cheese, the website you can get all of your TV and film news, reviews and trailers. And yes, I have just gone to see Fantastic Four, The First Steps. This is the first Fantastic Four film in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, even though this is actually the fifth Fantastic Four film in the entirety of its franchise, runtime, existence. And while I thought, I feel like we've already done Fantastic Four, I don't really have too much interest in them, even though I know the basic characters, a couple of the main villains. I wasn't really too interested in this until I saw the trailer and thought, okay, this has potential to be good. And it is very good. Could I say it's fantastic? Okay, no, I'll stop. I'll stop. No, this is a really, really good film. I really, really enjoyed this. So the Fantastic Four, The First Steps, takes place a couple years after Sue, Johnny, Reed and Ben have already travelled into space and gained their unique superpowers, and this time they have to face the threat of the Silver Surfer and Galactus, the Planet Eater. That is essentially it. Nice and simple. Right from the opening scene, I really like, and this is what Superman actually did that I saw last week or a couple of weeks ago now, was that it's kind of skims through the whole origin story. We've done this with Spider-Man Homecoming as well, and I really like that. I think by now, we know these characters, especially with these particular characters. Like I'd mentioned a couple of times, there's been loads of films on them already, as well as, I'm pretty sure, a cartoon series. We know these characters by now, so their backstory and exposition is literally and very nicely recapped in the first few minutes, where it's set on it's equivalent to a late night show with an audience. And yeah, that's kind of it. You do a quick recap. There were astronauts, they went into space, had an accident, and when they came back, they were given unique superpowers. And that's all you need to know. And I think I think with the characters that you know quite well, I think this is the best way to go. This is the best direction for those films to take. I think I mentioned with Superman, with the next one, there's going to be a couple things with those films that they're going to have to do an origin story on and a full one. But with characters that we know so well by this point, we're well versed in the comic book world and the comic film world, we don't need the full film to be an origin story. But this is a different world. So this is a different Earth that the Fantastic Four live in. And I really like that. I really like the world building of, it looks like it's set in the 60s, but they've got really futuristic technology. If you know, the old posters of, here's what people in the 60s or 70s thought the world would look like in 2020 or something, and you had flying cars and travel by rocket and stuff. That's what this world is, which I think is great. I'm going to try not use the word fantastic a lot. But I think that's great. I really love the world building of this. It was really unique to the MCU, and definitely had even the title sequence had if you remember the show Bewitched, it was very much like that, very 60s-esque, and it kept consistently like that through its environment and the way that the world was laid out. So yeah, it was a really cool visuals with the 60s attire that people were wearing, the 60s old haircuts, but they were also in flying cars, very advanced space travel. And yeah, I really, really liked that. It made this film really unique in its world building within the MCU. The lead cast was also great as well. So Joseph Quinn plays Johnny Storm this time, and he was fantastic. I thought, if you remember, the first two films were Chris Evans and Jessica Alba, were technically second and third, but with the films with Jessica Alba and Chris Evans played Johnny Storm in that. And in those films, he was a lot more of a playboy, mischievous person more than anything else. But with here, I like this portrayal of Johnny Storm a lot more, because while you get the hints of, yeah, he's a bit of a playboy, he's a bit flirty, you know, you get that with his interactions with the Silver Surfer. Sometimes it's not always there, but it also shows this film also shows that he's actually intelligent. He is the one who figures out quite a lot of things within this. And yeah, he definitely held his own in this as well. He wasn't just dismissed as like, okay, well, you're just this type of character and that's it. He actually had a reason to be there. He was intelligent. He was very, very smart. And I think they did a really good job of this. Sue Storm, played by Vanessa Kirby, was also great, as she comes to play a very protective mother. I'll get more into her, because I am going to do a spoiler thing on this, so I'll get more into her role within this later on in the spoilers. But I thought she was great. I think it was interesting that she already starts out as expectant. The film literally starts with her announcing her pregnancy, and I think at first I was unsure of that, because I was like, okay, are you just doing this film to have, oh, there's a woman character here, so she has to be pregnant, oh, she has to be stereotypically female to, you know, and have that typical female role to fit the 60s aesthetic, or do you actually have a reason for that being there? And yeah, there is a reason for that. It's not only for the plot, but it's also, the stakes are upped because of it. So when Galactus gets round to getting to Earth, you realise that the Fantastic Four aren't just protecting the whole world, they're protecting their own family. And the message of, you know, protecting and loving your family and being a loving family is actually consistent throughout this film. I can't remember if I've already mentioned that, but it is consistent throughout this film. And the introduction of Sue's baby is actually a very important key to that. Pedro Pascal as Reed Richards, I liked for the most part. I think he was really good as the very nervous father, but also the scientist who is constantly beating himself up about, I failed this time, and he always takes the fall for things, he always takes the blame for things if something goes wrong, and he tries to see himself as that shield for the other family members. And yeah, you do see that he beats himself up a lot, sort of mentally, and I thought he did that really well. I think towards the end of the film his acting got a bit wooden, but I really liked his portrayal of Reed Richards, with what I've already just said. I think he carried that emotion really well. But yeah, I think his acting towards the end just got a little bit wooden. And then lastly, Ebon Moss-Bachrach plays Ben. And yeah, I really liked him as well. I think what I liked the most is that his friendship between him and Johnny Storm, I really enjoyed, and this also furthered the whole they're a family kind of thing. It wasn't so much as going back to the Jessica Alba and Chris Evans films, where if you remember in those two films, they were constantly at each other's throats, hated each other. It didn't really seem like, you know, they were friends or anything. But in this one, I like that their rivalry is more of a sibling rivalry. They more have a sibling-like relationship, which I quite liked. So one minute they'll be, you know, buddies with each other, the next minute they'll be pranking each other, which I quite liked. That worked really well. And again, like I just said, it kept in with the, you know, they're a family. They got to stick together. They got to look out for each other and care for each other. And you've really got that with all four of them. And then lastly, Silver Surfer and Galactus. So I don't know too much about these characters, so I can only speak on them in terms of this film. But I am happy to have a Galactus that's comic accurate, because we've had this before. The second, I think it was Rise of the Silver Surfer, did try and do the Galactus storyline and the Silver Surfer storyline. While I think, obviously, they went for a more comic book, olden style visual of the Silver Surfer in that previous film, this one has gone for a different version, which I really liked her in this. I think you did feel for her. You felt like you knew there was something going on, and there was more to the eye than what you saw with the Silver Surfer in this. Galactus, all I know is that he's a giant, big god, planet eater. That's kind of it, but I know what he looks like in the comics. We have a comic accurate Galactus, which I'm really happy to see, because in that other film, Rise of the Silver Surfer, it was just a big cloud, ball of cloud, and that was kind of it, which I think that one was still terrifying, but it was really nice to see a comic book accurate version of him, and yeah, that was really well done, and he did seem menacing, especially near the end. I think parts of this is shown in the trailer, but I'm not going to say everything. But yeah, there were definitely moments where you could feel that threat, and the threat of how powerful he was and how dangerous he was, and I think that worked really, really well. It looked amazing. So I was really happy with that. And they did a really good job of showing the threat throughout this, because once you're introduced to these villains, they're on a timer. Like the Fantastic Four and Earth itself is on a timer. So I like you see the Four try out different ideas to save the planet. And that's all I'm going to say. But I like that it shows that they are trying their best. Like, they say, like, we saw this thing. It is more powerful than us, but that doesn't mean we're going to give up. And I really liked that. It really showed their strength and their protective side to the world that they live in. So Fantastic Four, The First Steps, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a very, very well done film. The world building was fantastic. The characters, the portrayal of them, I thought was great. I really enjoyed that. And yay, we have a comic book accurate Galactus, which is awesome. So, I'm going to now get into spoilers. I don't have much, because again, I don't have too much background knowledge of the comics. So, if you guys want to explain some things in the comments, then to help me out. Because I'm sure there's some names that were dropped that I didn't, just went over my head. I didn't understand it. So, I'm sure there's more that you guys know as well. But yeah. We're going to get into spoilers for the Fantastic Four. Okay, so we're in spoilers now for Fantastic Four, The First Steps. I only have 3 things that I want to talk about. So it's not going to be a very long spoiler section, but yeah. I've got a few things I want to talk about, but that's kind of it. So the first thing I've written down, I'm looking at my phone. So the first thing I've written is Franklin is like Galactus. So Franklin is Sue Storm's baby. So yeah, what was interesting, that whole scene where they're out in space and they find Galactus' ship, which was terrifying, by the way. They really did a good job of showing how huge it is and the scale of it and how daunting it looks. They did a really good job with that, but there's a whole sequence where they have to get away from him and away from the Silver Surfer. At the same time, Sue has just gone into labour. That was a very tense scene. That was very well done. What ends up happening is they meet with Galactus, and they basically go to Galactus. Their world is being marked for death for him to eat, and they basically say, look, we've basically come to talk. What do you want? Is there any way out of this? And Galactus says, you have a child that is powerful enough to stop my hunger. If you give me the child, I will spare your planet. And this is also something similar that happened with the Silver Surfer, how she became the Silver Surfer, is that to protect her planet, which was the very first one he devoured, she sacrificed herself and became that, the Seeker of Worlds. I couldn't think what the word was, but the Seeker of Worlds for him. So that was the sacrifice that she made. But obviously the Fantastic Four ain't going to say yes to that. So what was interesting is that Galactus says that the baby has a power similar to him. So I think that's going to be interesting to see how that develops. And I think some of Franklin's powers are kind of hinted at near the end. So there is a moment where you think that near the end they defeated Galactus. It looks like Sue Storm is dead. I will say the only thing I didn't like about this film is that her sort of death scene goes on for way too long. It was a bit like Deadpool 2, where he keeps, like, it seems like he's dying and then he wakes up and then he dies and then wakes up. And it just went on for way too long. I was getting a bit bored. But that scene is also shown to hint some of Franklin's powers, little baby Franklin. Some of his powers is that he resurrects Sue, which is going to be really interesting later on. Which then brings us on to my final point, which is the mid-credits scene. So there is a mid-credits scene and there's an end-credits scene. The end-credits scene is nothing. It's just the intro for the in-world Fantastic Four cartoon, and that is it. There's nothing else there. The mid-credits scene is the important one, though, because the mid-credits scene is set 4 years later. Franklin is now 4 or 5 years old, and Sue goes off to get a book for him to read, comes back and hears something. She sneakily goes up to Franklin, and it's Dr. Doom. Dr. Doom has come to see Franklin, and while you don't see the face, you definitely see the cloak and the mask. So his back is turned to the camera. I don't know if I've actually talked about the Dr. Doom casting on this channel yet. I'm not a huge fan of it. If you don't know, Robert Downey Jr. is going to play Dr. Doom, which I'm not entirely sure about. I know we've had Marvel characters actors in the Marvel universe and Marvel films sort of play different characters and 2 different characters. Okay, I get that, but I think my problem with this one is that Tony Stark / Iron Man had such a good departure and such a well-written departure that it feels a bit weird with Robert Downey Jr. coming back as a different character in such a big role as well, because I'm guessing that he's going to be the big villain in Avengers Doomsday. That's my guess anyway. So I do feel a bit weird about that, but I don't know. At the same time, that it's kind of piqued my interest a bit, but not enough to actually go and see that film. But the other thing I want to talk about, and I apologise in advance, I am going to be spoiling the mid-credit scene for Thunderbolts. Unfortunately, not that anyone saw that film, unfortunately. Go and see it. Go watch it when it comes out again. It's really good. But I apologise, I am going to be spoiling the mid-credit scene for that because I'm a little confused. So, the mid-credit scene for Thunderbolts is set 14 months later. And long story short, Thunderbolts get a intergalactic signal on their system. And what comes up on the screen is the Fantastic Four spaceship. I thought this film was going to end with that scene. I thought that they were going to lose against Galactus and the Silver Surfer, and I thought they were going to have to leave Earth because they failed. And yeah, it ends up going into crossing over with that Thunderbolt scene. I thought that's where it was going to go, like how that was going to end. So I was a little confused when they ended up actually succeeding. So I do wonder where things are going to go now. I know there was a scene at one point in the film where they're trying to figure out what to do and how to beat Galactus. And at one point, one of them suggests, just leaving, just running away, which one of them quickly shuts down. But I thought that's where it was going to go. They were just going to leave Earth and leave everyone behind to find a new planet. So I'm a little confused on how this is going to work now. I'm sure there's going to be a reason for it. Maybe after the film with Doctor Doom, maybe they're going to do another one first, and then that's going to be the reason they come to this other universe, and so on and so forth. But yeah, that did confuse me a little bit. But yeah, I don't have much in spoilers. That's kind of it, really. I really enjoyed this film. I actually like superhero films again. We'll see about Ironheart. I apologise. I am going to do a review for the last 3 episodes, but I just haven't had the time yet, so I do apologise. But I will get around to that next week or this coming week or something. But yeah, I do apologise for that. But this was my review on the Fantastic Four First Steps. I was Megan. This is Battle Royale with Cheese. See you soon.